Greetings, Watford fans. I'm Omar Moore, and welcome to the Orns Friday Focus, a preview of Leeds United versus Watford to be played tomorrow at Elland Road. Watford coming off the 1-1 draw against Newcastle last weekend at the Vic, and it's an opportunity for Watford to keep this unbeaten run going. It is at two games at the moment in the Premier League, coming off the previous away trip, which saw Watford run out 3-1 winners at Norwich City, and then the 1-1 draw, as I said, at home against Newcastle. And they're looking, Watford are, to stretch it to three consecutive games unbeaten. And the hope is that Watford can do well enough at Leeds United to claim at least a point, if not get all three. Leeds coming off their 2-1 home defeat to West Ham will be at home again to take on Watford in this game on Saturday. And the good news for Watford is that they have pretty much everybody available in their squad to play except for Peter Atebo. And I do wish Peter all the very best in his long-term recovery. He apparently, according to Watford and their PR, has torn a quadricep muscle. Uh, that's really a rough injury. It really is, and so he's going to be out for at least 4 months. The prognosis or the diagnosis is a torn quadricep, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, and he will be out for between 4 and 5 months. My goodness me, that is the bulk of the season. So he may not be returning to feature in Watford until maybe March or April of 2022. So this is a very, very sad bit of news for Peter Atebo, but I know that he will come back strong and stronger than he was. The injury apparently was picked up right near the end of the game against Newcastle, which is no one wants to pick up an injury ever at all at any point in the game, but it's really sad that it came right at the end of the game. But as I say, injuries come at any time, and I just wish Peter Atebo all the very best, sending my heartfelt prayers and really sincere best wishes to you, Peter, on your recovery. And I hope you come back quicker than expected, but I know you will come back, and I'm confident that you will, and that you will feature at some point before this season is over. So that I am very confident of, and sending you all the very best. Um, from here in San Francisco, California. Now, the rest of the team is there's a lot of people to choose from for tomorrow's trip to Elland Road. And there is some good news as a contrast to the bad news that I just gave you, is that Daniel Bachman is available again to start. And he's probably going to start tomorrow. I would bet that he would. He's come back from this minor knee injury that I was actually a bit more concerned about than obviously he was, because he's come back from it pretty well and well enough to be included in the squad and expected to feature. I would have to think that he's going to start. Goalkeepers, normally don't come into a game midway unless the number one who is starting is injured. And so, since that is not the case with Bachman now, I expect Bachman to start. And also, I'm concerned about Ben Foster starting, because Ben Foster now for two consecutive weeks has made errors that led to goals, or errors on balls that should have been saved, shall I say. And those were two goals Watford shouldn't have conceded, one against Norwich, one against Newcastle. And I think now that what you're going to see is Bachman starting tomorrow in between the sticks for the Orns. And very good news also, Tom Cleverley back after the concussion protocol substitution last week against Newcastle. He returns, and I think he'll be starting as well in the lineup tomorrow. Now, just a few things, and I kind of said some of these things in the podcast episode most recently on the UORNS podcast, which is available on Apple, Spotify, and a number of other platforms. And Watford are going to be facing a lead side that's going to be very direct, very direct. And what Watford need to do is press high, not all the time. And I know it's a risky thing to do in the Premier League. And I know Cisco really hasn't done this in the Premier League with Watford because, of course, the inherent risk of losing the ball and being open at the back. But because Leeds are thriving, and they do thrive, not thriving yet because they've not yet won in the Premier League this season, but because Leeds are a thriving team in terms of their attacking situation, they always love to go forward. I think Watford should try to press them every now and again, high press up the pitch, and counter attack them up the pitch. And you have enough pace in the final third or so of the pitch to outplace Leeds. I think Leeds have got some very pacey players. I know they've got some very pacey players. That's not the issue. But I think if Watford can try to high press here and there in the game, I think that they can have some joy, and I think that they can absolutely score a couple of goals on Leeds, who, by virtue of them going forward, will leave holes at the back. And of course, it's a risk for Watford too, as I said. But I think Watford in the final third have some really good pace. I wouldn't say that Watford over the entire field have the fastest team. They do have some fast people in the team, but I will definitely say that in the final third of the pitch, there are a few teams. There's a few teams, but not too many that are faster than Watford are. And I think that that's why, among other reasons, the high press will be effective for Watford on Saturday if they use it, and use it at the right times. You can't use it every play. You can't use it every minute of the game. That's impossible. And maybe the high press, if Cisco plans to do that, and I don't know if he will, obviously, we'll find out. But if Cisco does plan to do that, maybe there will be a formation change in effect, because it does take a lot of energy to continuously high press. And as I say, I don't think Watford are going to do that continuously tomorrow. But if they do plan to do it at various stages, I would imagine there may be a change of formation. And I don't know if he's going to go to a flat back three. I don't know if he's going to do that, make it 3-5-2. Then, if Watford aren't able to hold on to the ball, you can have players drop back into a five. I don't know how well that's going to work. Obviously, that is something to look at and see what happens with it. If it does happen, I think Cisco has to be ready to make in-game changes in games like this, because I do think that this kind of a game, this particular kind of a game, is the kind of a game where I think Cisco will have to make some in-game changes now. And I'm not talking about subs. I'm talking about the way the shape of the team looks, because Leeds are going to be looking for their first win in the Premier League season, and they are going to go at us full hammer and tongs. And so we have to be ready to absorb that pressure, and we have to be sensible. I think we have to, again, be switched on, as I always say. And I know Cisco said this as well, obviously. We have to be switched on from minute one. We have to be switched on from minute one all the way through this match, especially against the lead side that is very quick, that comes at you, that throws runners at you. Rafinha is going to be a handful down that right side, and I know that Danny Rose will have to contend with him. Rafinha can drift into the middle as well. He's done that a few times. He's also someone that's adept at getting to the byline and crossing. So I think that what Watford have to do, and what they may find themselves doing, is going to a 3-5-2. I don't know if there's going to be a possibility of double coverage so that you can help Danny Rose, although Danny Rose has played excellent, don't get me wrong. But someone of Rafinha's pace could pose some issues, and we'll see how it works. I'm just very curious to see how Cisco lines Watford up in this game tomorrow. But the number one thing is mentality, as it always is, as far as I'm concerned, and being on aware of where you are as a defender when you're off the ball. I want to see Watford attack more, attack the ball more, that is, when you're in defense. And that means not giving players all this space in which to operate, not giving runners time to run around. You've got to track your man. You've got to be aware of the spacing. You've got to limit space for Leeds. The key thing for me, I think, with containing Leeds is limiting them to the outside. If you can keep Rafinha as quick as he is on the outside flank and not have him drift inside, I think you can do well against Leeds. But if you aren't able to keep up with Rafinha and he's able to drift in to from the right into the central positions and start to wreak havoc, that obviously is not going to be a good look for Watford. So I think the key is to try to keep Rafinha on the outside as he runs. And there's not just Rafinha to contend with. There are other very talented players on the Leeds United team. Also, of course, I think Watford, what they'll have to do as well very early on is establish some possession in the game. I think they're going to have to take the game to Leeds. I know that's a very risky thing to do, but Watford have to go forward with a positive mentality that says we're coming in here to take the 3 points from you, and we're coming in here to make sure that we are heard from in this match. Do not relent. And if you happen to score first, no matter who scores first in this game, make sure you do not retreat into your shell. I've talked about this a lot too. Watford cannot afford, no matter what the score is, whether it's Leeds scoring the first goal or whether it's Watford scoring the first goal, cannot afford to retreat and go into your shell. I've seen this, as I've said this before, many times this season with Watford. When they get the first goal, Watford, what I've noticed is a pattern of this. There is a retreat. And I've talked about this before, so I don't want to belabor it here, but I think it's very clear that Watford have to change that in their makeup and in their mentality. They will have to, even if they are 1-0 in this match tomorrow, they have to keep going for it. They have to keep going for it. And when they are without possession and they're out of possession, they're going to have to make sure that they keep Rafinha limited to outside runs, and also make sure that they attack the ball defensively. One of the things I noticed against Newcastle, I've said this before, is that Newcastle had too much space in which to run. And that also comes when a team is inviting another team on. And what Watford did a lot during the game against Newcastle is that they invited Newcastle on far too much. It happened throughout the first half, and then Newcastle then just took the game to Watford in the first half. And then the second half, after Watford equalized, what you saw is the same thing. They invited Newcastle on for 10 minutes. And even after Josh King thought he had scored, and as did most of the rest of us, what we did again was we invited Newcastle on, and Newcastle were able to run one-on-one. And next minute, Jacob Murphy is in behind, running in one-on-one against Ben Foster. And, Jacob Murphy totally messed up the approach there. He should have had a goal. And again, that's something that Watford, I hope, learned from during their training this week. And I certainly think they have. You cannot leave spaces, and you cannot allow Newcastle time on the ball like they did. And certainly now with Leeds coming up tomorrow, you can't allow a team like Leeds all this time on the ball. This is the Premier League. And in the Premier League, you don't allow teams time on the ball. Generally, teams don't get time on the ball. And certainly when you are out of possession and you're the defending team, you have to make sure that you attack the ball and attack the spaces and make sure you keep your shape. And I know that's not easy to do against a team that's very fast like Leeds, but you've got to be able to have some discipline. I think tomorrow's game, to me, from the obvious being mentality, defensive discipline, I think, is going to be very important in this game. Being able to hold your line against a team that's very pacey like Leeds are, being able to hold that line and be very stubborn about holding your bank of 4 defenders or your bank of 3. Hold the line when Leeds come forward, because I think they are going to be bombarding us tomorrow, and we're going to have to deal with some sustained pressure. That's my outlook on it. But the key for me is Watford have to have a forward-thinking mentality. They have to be clinical. They have to be daring, and they have to just go for it and do not be tentative. That's one of the things that Watford cannot afford to do on the road. You only get a few opportunities on the road, and you've got to make them count, and you've just got to be merciless on the road. The way that Watford played against Norwich, they have to bring that into this game tomorrow against Leeds. Come in with a mentality that says we are coming in here to take 3 points. And if Watford do that, if they start the game brightly and have 10 minutes of sustained pressure and don't score, okay, we'll live with that. But you want to let those Leeds players and those Leeds fans know that you are here, and you are not here to make up the numbers in the Premier League. You are here to take 3 points from a team that hasn't won thus far this season in the Premier League, and you've got to make it count. Leeds are going to be throwing hell for leather, hell bent. They're going to be hell bent tomorrow. So Watford know that. Watford are going to have to sustain the pressure, sustain their own pressure, but keep, be key and clear about the fact that Leeds are going to be throwing everything at them, especially in the first few minutes of the game. My whole issue here, my whole recommendation is is that Watford get comfortable with possession. One of the things that they did not have a lot of time with last week was possession. They need to be comfortable again, playing the ball, moving the ball around, moving it quickly. And I think Watford need to be sensible about how they're playing the ball, where they're playing the ball. The passing has to be sharp. The passing was not as good until we got to the final 20 minutes or so of the game against Newcastle. Passing was not as good in the Newcastle game. It was good in the Norwich game, not so much in the Newcastle game. And that's the balance. Watford have to find a balance. They've got to find a balance between when they have the ball and when they don't have the ball. And they've got to have the same forward thinking endeavor in both situations when they're going forward and when they're in defense. I mean, you have to attack the ball the same. I mean, obviously, you have the ball when you're going forward, but you've got to attack the ball defensively. And you have to have that same mindset of, attacking the ball as if you have the ball. So in defense, what I would love to see tomorrow is a lot more aggression in defense. And what I mean is, I'm not talking about fouling everybody and breaking their legs. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about a mentality that says you need to make life uncomfortable for Leeds. Don't give them space. Attack that ball. Attack that ball. And one of the things again is that's why I recommend the high press. I recommend again, this is only for certain level, certain times. You've got to know when that's going to work and when to do it and when not to. I'm not saying do it the entire game. I'm saying put Leeds under some pressure. And the way to do that is high pressing them in these situations, particularly in the first half of the game, and put them under situations where they're going to have to get rid of the ball quickly. And if you high press Leeds, I'm telling you, you could force some mistakes from them. So I think that's what Watford have to do. They're going to have to be very assertive tomorrow, defensively and in attack, and make sure that you are fearless out there at a very hostile venue to play in, Elland Road. And I think that if Watford put these things together, there's no reason that they can't come out with a positive result against Leeds tomorrow.